Hello, my name is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktavo, the parent company of InkSoft, Printavo, Sign Tracker, Clarity, and Graphics Flow. Yes, we've expanded to the UK with our Clarity brand. With me today, we have Ross Hunter from ROQ US. Ross and I have known each other for a few years. One of the most respected industry, he gets embarrassed when I say industry experts in our industry, but somebody that I have learned a tremendous amount from in my career, and I wanted to kidnap him for an hour and pick his brain. And so you guys are the recipients of an hour with Ross. So we are going to get right into it. But first, I'd like Ross, if you can talk a little bit about your background, and then also, what is ROQ US all about?
Absolutely, Craig. Well, thanks for having me, first of all, and thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. Made me a little rosy there. But yeah, Ross Hunter, president of ROQ US. A little bit about me. I've been in this industry for a little over 20 years now. Started out printing shirts, like a lot of the folks that are probably in here listening. Owned a business in Los Angeles for about 11 years, printing for all likes of people, high schools. We did sports teams and Sony and all sorts of different stuff back in the day. Did a lot of consulting all over the country for shops that were looking for help and looking to grow their businesses. And then launched ROQ US a little over 5 years ago now, and have been doing that ever since. And yeah, a little about us. Obviously, ROQ US, equipment manufacturer. We are 43 years old now. Serve 86 countries globally. Largest print shop in the world in China, runs all ROQ ovals. Pretty impressive operation. Cool to see. These are ovals that look like the size of a football field almost. But really set up on four pillars of the business. So a lot of people think of us as screen, but we're not just screen. We're screen, we're DTG, digital, fulfillment, and then we've got DTF adjacent products as well. And so we're really kind of moving into those four pillars. A lot of what we're going to talk about, I think, today, which is, how do you be all things to all people? And, for us, it's been really important to engineer our products and kind of think to the future of this industry and what people need to ensure that we're automating the places that people truly need it.
Yeah, I flipped over on the website to the ROQ Impress, and no pun intended. It's really impressive. And as someone that's pressed tens of thousands of shirts in my career and running a family business, with Heat Press being a big part of what we did, it's kind of mind-boggling that you have a single machine there that can take the place of, what, about 3 or 4 people in terms of pressing?
Easily. Yeah. I mean, in some places we've reduced staff needs by, in the tens and twenties, with a couple of these machines, because they can do a lot and they can do it very fast.
Yeah, I mean, I made a bold statement to one of my friends that's a hardcore screen printer. I said, automated heat press equipment is going to start to compete with an automated screen printing equipment. And he was like, there's no way. I mean, you've got an oval and it's just cranking out volume. And I'm like, well, someday somebody's going to cook up an automated press. And then sure enough, I go to the Long Beach show and I see this thing and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to change a few things. But I think that's a good lead into kind of the reason we did this is there's just so much confusion in the marketplace around, where does screen printing fit here? And, I hear people say, oh, screen printing's going away. It's going to get displaced by DTF. I don't feel that way at all. I mean, I think if you go to any retail store, like a big box retail store, whether you're going to Target or Walmart or wherever you're going, and you look at the quote graphic tees that are going to be sprinkled through all the departments, the majority of that work is still going to be screen printed. And I think that's because of the cost per print and time efficiency. So with that being said, it's like, really, where does DTF and then DTG fit into this? And what's this ecosystem of imprinting like in the year 2025?
Yeah.
Really, what is it? And so that's kind of where we're gonna start off. And in terms of like industry trends towards automation and print shops, where do you see all this fitting together? Where do you see screen printing fitting in with DTG versus digital, and specifically print on demand and bulk ordering?
It's such a huge question, and I think it's relevant to start at where we're at as an industry right now, just in general. I think a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads. I think folks are seeing a slowing in the industry, and I kind of want to address how these changes of technology sort of play into what's happening currently, just in general. So, it's kind of funny to bring back up COVID. I think so many people want to, push that off to the side. We were there, we did it, and it's over. And that may be true, but we're still feeling the effects of what COVID caused as to us as an industry. And I think what folks don't remember is how everyone's buying habits changed on a dime, right? So when everyone was locked away for 3 months, some people for longer than that, because they chose to be. People changed the way they shop. I was one of those people. I had never shopped on Amazon in my life until COVID. My wife had, my family had, but I was one of those people. I needed immediate gratification of walking in the store, picking out a product, holding it. And yes, I paid more money for that thing, and it was kind of stupid, but that's how I shopped. That's what I enjoyed. And once I learned, how simple it was and how quick it was to get things cheaper, get things, I wouldn't say necessarily faster, but pretty quick, it changed the way I shopped. And I think, that happened across this country to a lot of people, and it changed the way that people shop for shirts, for graphic tees, for the things that we print every day. But beyond that, it changed the way our consumers think. So when you think of a high school, back when I owned my printing business, we did a ton of high school work. I'd walk in a few months ago in summer. You'd talk to the, student government director. Typically, they're the ones in charge of all the spirit wear. You'd figure out a couple designs for t-shirts and some hoodies. They'd write you a check for 20 grand. You'd go print all this stuff. Well, when those people changed the way they shopped, they started to see all these different web stores coming up, right? And that school didn't want to write a check for 20 grand. They didn't really want to hold inventory, but they did it. They didn't really want to take the students' money at a little window at $10. Okay, here's your t-shirt. What size do you need? And they were getting stuck with, probably 20% of that at the end of the year that didn't sell, right? And, you kind of had POD happening. We knew about it, right? This was happening on a large scale. This was happening with, your big, your Monster Digitals, your Fanatics. I mean, all these big companies that were doing print on demand, but it hadn't really touched that high school type consumer yet until, 2-3 years ago. And now that person can say, okay, this high school, I want to put up a website. We can offer 5 hoodies, 10 t-shirts, mugs, lanyards, whatever. We don't have to take the kids' money. We don't have to hold stock. We don't even have to deal with the student. We're just going to send a URL home with the kids. The parents are going to get online, order what they want. We don't ever have to think about it again. We're going to make money. And, unfortunately, in our industry, you get about 30,000 printers average, nationwide. And these folks didn't all have that technology to build a web store, to be able to offer these things to their customers, or to be able to do production on it, right? You're not going to print one hoodie on a screen printing press. And so I think that customer habits, the end consumer, really changed the way that we need to think about production. And then at the same time, this fun thing called DTF took off, right? So it's like DTF takes off, POD's changing, right? The end consumer wants more print on demand. And you have a lot of people that I think were just making decisions for their business on equipment and automation and things on this concept of like, oh, I need to get into this, so I've got to buy this, or I've got to buy this. They didn't have a business plan. They didn't have the technology. They didn't have it thought out, right? And that's where we've kind of landed right now. We're in this weird convergence where the end consumer is demanding change, and we're slow to react to that. So you have a lot of people that are still out there scratching their heads like, man, business is slow. What do I need to do? Right? And those schools aren't going to be serviced by the massive POD printers out there. They need the local printer that's got the capabilities to provide them with the technology and then be able to fulfill their orders. So when you ask, like, where is all this going? Right? We've got DTF, we've got DTG, we've got screen. I'm going to change screen to bulk. Right. And then we can think of DTF and DTG as either bulk or one-off or POD, right? Because you can do both. It's cost prohibitive sometimes to do both. And then there's obviously quality concerns and things like that, depending on your client. But what I would say is the businesses that are going to push through this, that are going to win, are going to have 4 things They're going to have the printing technology, all three. They're going to have digital, they're going to have DTF, they're going to have screen. You have to keep bulk because you're going to have bulk orders. You're going to want to do them cheap. Screen is never going to go away. It'll always be there. DTF, it's cheap, it's convenient, it's easy, it's durable. It can go across any fabric, which is its really, kind of claim to fame. You don't have to worry about polyesters versus cottons versus this. And you're going to continue to have digital from a POD standpoint. They all three are going to live together, right, in this ecosystem. And your business is going to be the one that has to dictate where those things go from an operational standpoint. Who's your client? What do they want? What are you offering, right? And which printing methodology are you going to use on that? But the fourth thing that I didn't say is an IT stack. This is the one thing that people need. They need the ability to offer web stores. They need a program for web stores. What does that look like? We have a client. They've got over 800 web stores built right now. They charge monthly for those. The passive income is insane. It's like a gym membership. I mean, it's paying their operating expenses just out of charging people to host a web store. Now, they don't get orders from all those all the time, which is fine. They're making money, right? So you've got to have the ability to offer that, and you've got to have a good back end to your operation. So you've got to have good software that's routing all this stuff where it needs to go, right? A good warehouse management system, a good ERP. And again, I just think that our industry we were 20 years behind 20 years ago, right? And so we're now seeing, you guys make great software. There's a lot of different software out there that's available to people. But that's the first thing that they need to start looking at, and then build a business plan on how they're going to go out there and get those customers.
It's interesting.
Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's perfect. I'm sitting here taking mental notes, and you're absolutely right about the four things. And the tech stack part. Right before the we got on, I was actually doing my course outline for the class I'm teaching at the Impression Show in Dallas, which is on building a tech stack. And it's really interesting. You talk about our industry being a little bit technologically stunted. A good qualifying question I'll talk to new people at shows is I'll just say, hey, what's your tech stack look like? And if they say, what's a tech stack? I kind of know where they're at. And that's okay, because it is complicated and there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a little bit scary. But, I think you touched on some of the big ones, some kind of an e-commerce / online store platform to make it convenient for your customer, shop management, invoicing, shipping, fulfillment, your graphics software, your accounting package. I think part of a tech stack now is also how you interact with outsourced graphic services. I think that's actually a huge part of a tech stack now. There's great technology to, kind of take some of the manual labor off your plate and let the experts do it. You can't compete with bulk ordering with somebody that's willing to print on a cadence where they host a store, orders come in, and then, we've collected orders for this period of time. We're going to bulk them together and print them. But, this upfront bulk order is hard to compete on that. And that's, I think, where the equipment really starts to dictate some of your flexibility around how you sell, especially on a web store. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
But as an equipment provider, the one thing I'll tell people is don't buy the equipment. That's what I saw, right? We had this rush of like, oh, bulk orders are down. I need to do POD. Let me go buy something. That is the wrong response to this. You have to have a business plan. You have to have the technology. You have to know what clients you're going after. You have to know what they want. Put that all together and then figure out the equipment piece. I think what a lot of folks do is they rush out and they get the big new shiny thing. I mean, I was guilty of that back in the day. I remember we buy nail head machines. I bought some applicators for rhinestoning. And I mean, I didn't have a plan for it. We were just like, oh, let's go spend money and the people will come. Go get the people first. Have the plan first, then figure out what equipment fits into that plan, because they all do something a little bit different. You may decide that you need industrial DTG versus DTF based on what your client's needs are, or vice versa, right? But if you just go spend the money without having the plan, having the technology, having an understanding of what you're doing, you're going to have, a whole world of problems that are going to be hard to reverse out and fix. And I think that we saw that with the DTF craze. I mean, it was just like, oh, everyone bought a DTF machine. And it's like, why? Do you need it? What's it for? right? And so I think that, and then you got to look at your business, figure out where you need to automate first, right? Because a lot of times it's not the obvious thing. It's something that is not obvious, right? But we need to understand our businesses better.
Agreed. And it's interesting, with you go to trade shows now in our industry, and the equipment that's heavily focused at the show is going to be DTF printing equipment, and people are kind of baffled. What do I select? What do I pick? And I think the first question I would ask them is, hey, why don't you start outsourcing first to see where you're headed? And the one thing that I rarely see people give serious consideration to is, what's the experience in terms of maintenance going to be like for you? These are the questions you need to ask your supplier. And what kind of support are they going to give you after they get your money? Because there's a lot of suppliers, they're happy to sell you the printer, but once they have your money, it's like, hey, good luck, have a nice day. That's one of the things, we wouldn't have aligned ourselves with ROQ if you guys acted that way. We know what the support is after the fact, and we know the dedication of your staff. And also there's good vibe with the company, which is kind of fun. That meshes up with what we do. We like to have fun, but we're serious about our business, and we take care of our customers. So that's another key consideration when you're looking at equipment is, talk to other people that own it, find out what they're going to do to support you afterwards. Especially if you're out in the middle of nowhere, if you got to get a technician out there, that can be kind of expensive.
So how they're using it, when they're using it. And what I will tell people, just because you brought up, there's a lot of people saying screen's going away. We as a company are doubling down on screen right now. You all will see all sorts of very cool things coming out for screen next year. We are engineering the heck out of the process. We're going to change the game. We're continuing to invest in screen, and very heavily, because it is a process that needs more automation. It needs less touches. It needs less people, right, on the floor. And we're making that our mission to make screen just as competitive with any of these other processes it can be. So we wouldn't be spending the money. We wouldn't be spending the engineering hours if screen were not going to be here and be here to stay. So I just want to be clear. Companies like ours 100% know and believe that screen is still a very big part of our future in apparel decoration. So I just want to be clear on that, because I know there is that sentiment that it's just, oh my gosh, DTF and DTG are just taking over. It will always have its place.
Being out in the field and talking to a lot of customers, I can see that, folks that are big screen printers, they've just pivoted to adding DTF or DTG as a supplementary process to complement what they're doing, not necessarily replace it. But one of the things that I wanted, we brought up the word automation, which is a big, broad word. I think in the context of our industry, I think when people think automation, they think about automated screen printing presses first. Now, automation also becomes part of the conversation in finishing and heat pressing. But when are you ready? Like when in a small business, as you're growing, and it's easy to throw equipment and people at problems, but at what point is somebody ready to start automating the equipment side of their business?
I think it's really when the cost of people start to outweigh the automation. So when you can prove a year, 2 year ROI on automating a process to not necessarily eliminate labor, but maybe either eliminate labor or repurpose that labor to something else in your business, it's time. And I think that, you've got to consistently and constantly be looking at your business, at your processes, at what you're spending in headcount, and start to evaluate those things. It's interesting. We kind of get in these ruts, right? And I've been in some of these big organizations where, they'll have 40, 50 people folding and bagging shirts is a perfect example of this. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of HR. That's a lot of management. That's a lot of payroll. And, with 2 machines, all of those people could either be repurposed or eliminated, right? And those 2 machines pay for themselves in no time. So even at a small scale, as you're growing, thinking about things like pre-press. How much time are you spending there? How much time are you losing there? How much does a machine cost to replace that pre-press process? So you're getting, quicker output, better output, quicker registration on press, because it's a domino effect. Once you automate one thing, it's going to help something else, right? So understanding that workflow, you should do it. You should do it the second it's going to save you money. and some people will do it out of the game. I mean, we're seeing more people now get into this industry that are just starting to automate everything right out of the gate. When I was in it, it was a slow process. It's like, you start with the press and then you move into some pre-press and then you might move into some post-press. I mean, now you'll see people with business plans where it makes sense to start with everything right out of the gate. But if you're adding, evaluate those costs. It will make mathematical sense. If you do that, do it, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a close friend has a very successful, thriving screen printing business and embroidery, and they're at that breaking point where they know they need to do an auto. They know they need to, but one of the things that's scaring them off is the complexity. Analog process, pulling a squeegee, versus all of a sudden, you have something automated, digital. It's equipment, has to be maintained. What would you say to somebody that's a little bit scared by the complexity and they want to grow their business, but they're a little scared by the complexity and the extra maintenance and upkeep for automated equipment? What's your thoughts on that?
I would say that the time that you're going to save in doing it is going to outweigh the, I guess, fear of and time that you're going to spend maintaining it. I mean, things like a screen printing press, for example, is very little maintenance, right? I mean, you've got some maintenance. I have to use our equipment as what I'm talking about, but 50,000 indexes, you're going to lubricate the press. That's about it. 100,000, you're going to lubricate it again. That's about it. I mean, in terms of screen printing equipment, I don't think that the fear should be there in terms of maintenance. I think for most people that I see, it's the cost. It's that commitment of, dropping $100,000 on a piece of equipment. And again, what I'd say is if you figured out the math and you figured out your opportunity costs, which for most small companies, they're still the ones back there printing, or maybe they've got a couple people that they're paying to do that work. But that work goes from, doing whatever, four jobs in an 8-hour day to like 4 jobs in 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever the case may be based on the job. All that time that you inherit is an opportunity for you to do something else. So for an owner operator, that's an opportunity for them to go out and sell more business. For someone that's paying people, that's repurposing people to do something else that you need in your business done. That's going to help you grow. Right. So, and automatic presses are weird. Once you add one, business just starts to come. I think confidence is boosted. Your ability to take on capacity is boosted. Your quality, frankly, is better. It's more consistent. I mean, there's so many advantages there. For other types of equipment, I just go back to the math problem. I think if the math pencils out, you make the investment. And that's why you're in business. I mean, business people have to take risks. We have to get over our fears. But we need to do it in a smart way. And that's why I say, don't just go out and buy something thinking you're going to solve a problem. That's just throwing money at it. Know that it's going to solve the problem. Know how quickly you're making your money back and know what it's doing for your business. And we've got some good resources for folks too that are listening that may have those fears. We actually have an ebook called The 7 Worst Fears of automating, and we've talked to clients. It's got actual stories in this book, so you can read through what other people have gone through and kind of see if that's something that resonates with you, just to kind of understand how you get over those fears.
I think one of the things that's challenging too is, when you look at costs, obviously capital equipment costs up front. And I think most people are financing these days and just cash flowing a piece of equipment makes the most sense. Even with interest rates higher, it still makes the most sense for most businesses. But when you look at the cost per unit for the print and where it makes sense to actually set something up for a process and the speed, I mean, these are kind of the variables when you make a selection in terms of how you're going to print it. If you were to just kind of narrow it down to, this is the number of units that I'd print on this device. This is my speed of production and my cost. How would you summarize? I know it's a loaded question. DTG versus direct to garment versus screen printing. Like where's the sweet spot for each one of those?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, direct to garment, you're spending more money on ink. You're spending more money on maintenance. You're spending more money on everything. I mean, I will tell you, owning industrial DTG equipment, I say industrial because I'm not talking about small tabletop DTG equipment. I'm talking about big stuff. It's like owning an airplane. I mean, to be frank, right?
Yeah.
It's you got to pay. The fuel is the ink, right? So you're paying for the fuel. You've got the maintenance. You've got a lot to think about when you get into DTG. So I don't really see the two processes as comparative. I see them as complementary to one another and completely different. So we've got screen printers that have brought in our DTG technology, and what they do is they may route any order that's under X amount of pieces. Typically, I'd say somewhere in the 300 neighborhood, and they'll route it over to digital. Just to answer your question, kind of through client experiences that I know, everything above 300 will go the other direction into a screen process. And then this gives them the ability to do print on demand. So they're able now to grow their business through a print on demand platform. Plus, they're able to take that smaller work, which is nice to be able to do, and do it quicker. And then you'll see a lot of people where it's not based on quantity, but it's based on complexity of artwork, right? So instead of setting up a 12, 13, 14 color job on their screen printing press, even if it is, 3,000 pieces, they may opt to route it to DTG. The problem is you've got to sell that to your client, right? Because you're going to have to charge them more. If you're going to run something digital, you need to make sure that you're paying for that ink or that fuel, and you're making money. And so I think, again, it's an upsell to a client to go into a process like that. And you've got to make sure that you're explaining it. I don't think we can just make those decisions on our own.
The most complicated, expensive industrial printing equipment, like a big, I call them grown-up DTG printer, is the most ideally suited piece of equipment for doing one-offs, one at a time, which I always think is ironic. But I've seen a shift in some of, not only what you described in bulk production and DTG, but I've seen some of the other big DTG printing companies, the big names, really shift towards bulk production, which is interesting.
It's all the traditional DT or POD printers that are now bringing in bulk processes because they're getting requests for it. And then we're seeing the opposite side of traditionally bulk needing to have an answer for print on demand. So, and that's this weird, place that we're in. And I don't think, we're going to completely be out of it for probably, 3+ years. I mean, people need to adopt these technologies. They need to be able to service all these clients. And there's a lot of people out there that are asking for this stuff that don't know where to go get it from an end consumer standpoint. And so, for the folks listening, if you haven't done this, go do it. Start thinking this way, because this is the future. You're going to start to show up to a Taylor Swift concert, for example. They'll have kiosks with bulk production. But they're going to eventually one day, you're going to walk into a concert and there's going to be digital kiosks all over where you can buy merch because it's easier for them. They don't have to pre-buy it. They don't have to stock it, and they can offer so much more stuff because they can get into promo. They can get into apparel. They can get into everything. You're going to start to see this at stadiums for sports teams where you can go up and personalize. Disney's already doing it, and they have been for a while. You go to a theme park, you can walk up to a kiosk, design your own shirt. It gets delivered back to the park same day. I mean, you're walking out with that thing. That's where we're moving to. And if you want to be part of being relevant, you've got to start driving your business to be all things to all people.
It's interesting. You look at like how DTF fits into the POD thing. I was talking to one of those vendors at the trade show, and he says, we really don't promote it as POD because I have 12 feet of film that has to come out of the machine before I get that transfer ready to clip it off. So I can't do one at a time. I have to gang them up and produce, those transfers in bulk. And that makes sense. I mean, if you produce on a cadence and you have 12 of this and 4 of this and 6 of this, you gang them up, and then you it's roll-fed printer, you start pumping it up. But just one-offs as they come in doesn't work. But what I've seen our customers do programs where they will, have a web store and they will limit the graphic to a set number of graphics that spans across a color range. And then they'll just sew transfers on the shelf, and they'll draw against transfers. And then when they get down to a minimum reorder quantity, they just refill. And that's where I think POD works well with DTF, but as far as, if you got 12 feet of material, you got to bust out before you get to that transfer.
I know a few places that are doing full POD with DTF. They have very complex systems.
Right.
Everything is barcoded. They
Yep.
have very intelligent cutting. Very intelligent cutting. It can be done. You have to invest in it if that's the direction you want to go. But to your point, just adding a DTF machine, thinking you're getting into the POD game, it's not the answer. You're right. I mean, for a traditional bulk printer, you're just adding another bulk process, and then what purpose is that really serving?
Some of the examples of companies that are kind of mixing all three processes. And you brought up some pretty big hitters. The first one you brought up was MV Sport, and which is interesting to me because my dad worked for them for a couple of years when he left Champion. He worked for MV Sport for a couple of years before we started our own sportswear business. But if you're not familiar with MV Sports, they've been around a long time, probably over 40, maybe even 50 years. They were kind of contemporary to Champion during their heyday, cut and sew operation. They also have their weatherproof line, which you probably see at retail if you go to TG Maxx or any of the big box retailers. But tell me what MV Sport is doing, like their mix of decoration equipment. What are they doing?
They're everything to everyone. So they have a very big DTF program. They have a very big DTG program, industrial DTG program, and then they have a very large screen printing program for bulk. And depending on, again, what they're selling, how they're selling it, who's buying it, it routes through that warehouse to go to the appropriate place. And these are the people that I look at, when I'm talking about the future and the people should be all things to all people. There are a lot of businesses that are the size of MB that we do business with. They are all things to all people. And so the way that I look at it, if all of the big players that are out there are adopting all these technologies and then understanding how operationally to route these orders through their facilities, and this is what they're doing, this is what the future is going to be, because they're the ones dictating it. And I mean, in the sport, they print for, I went to, my wife is a UC Davis alum. It's funny, you have a UC Davis graphic here. We went into their student store. I mean, everything in the store is MB. I mean, they're paving the way, right, for that type of merch. They do a lot in the travel space. They're paving the way there. So, I mean, let's look at the people we aspire to be and what their businesses are doing. And I think that that's what everyone should be thinking about doing with their own businesses, because these are the leaders in the field that are, paving the way for us. I mean, you look at even huge brands that are paving the way, like Nike. Nike adopted DTF. You walk into a sporting goods store right now, you'll see screen printed, you'll see digital, and you'll see DTF Nike. You go to a Disneyland, Disney World, you're going to see all three methodologies on their shelves.
Yeah, another one, a big one, obviously Fanatics, and Fanatics has been on a buying spree. That seems like they've gobbled up quite a share. But it's interesting. This is the English football team that I follow that won the Europa League last year after 41-year trophy drought in Europe. But I don't think they're stocking any of these goods. I think these are all being printed either in small batch quantities and fulfilled on the go, or even print on demand.
It's mostly print on demand.
Yeah, I mean, mostly. If you look at what they're doing, if you just go across here to all the different sports, we'll pull up the Diamondbacks here. I don't think it would be practical for them to inventory hundreds of thousands of SKUs across all these different brands. So the only way they can really do it is small batch production or print on demand. It's
and they do some bulk process. So it's interesting. They're another great example of this. They do bulk process, they run DTF, and they run digital, and they run print on demand, and they do some stocking strategy depending on what it's for. I think a lot of their bulk production is what's going out to stadiums.
Right. In the
retail. And I see that as something that's going to start to change over time. And I think, again, in 3 to 5 years, you're going to see continued large change happening there, where, again, bulk has its place. It does. It's going to exist, but there's going to be more access to print on demand. And here's a good reason. I mean, with both of these examples, where does DTF play in here? It plays in
Right.
because they're printing across polyester garments. They're printing on athletics, and it is a very easy, affordable way with great quality to print across those fabrics and be able to do them in small batch runs or even in a POD format.
Yeah, I see we're still milking the Diamondbacks World Series here since 2001. So, but another company we talked about a little bit was SunFrog. Talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, so SunFrog, they're a DTF program, and they are one of the ones that are doing POD from a DTF standpoint, and they're crushing it. Great company. We've automated a ton of their processes for them recently. And that impressive machine is a good example of what you were talking about earlier, right? To pull labor because they're doing heat pressing all day long. So to be able to run, 500 unique images an hour on one of those machines with robotics that are placing placing the transfer, peeling the transfer, and unloading the shirt to go off to compliance. It's completely streamlined their process. But they're a great example of people that are doing DTF from a POD perspective and making it work.
And a barcode driven system, probably.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And very well thought out. I mean, what they do there is like a symphony. I mean, they put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of engineering hours and understanding how their workflow works and how to create what they needed to create to be able to accomplish what they're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of these big printers, they're software companies too. I know SunFrog has an API to connect with fulfillment centers, and off-the-shelf solutions, especially around barcoding, don't necessarily exist. It's always kind of a hobbled together system using different technologies to kind of meet the endpoint. But barcoding, I think, is a bigger part of the future of printing. RFID chips, there's another one. There's been a lot of rumbling about using that as an alternative to barcoding, but we'll see where that goes. So in terms of an investment path, let's just use the example of an automatic screen print. Let's say the next step, we're a manual screen printer. We want to, our business is growing. We can no longer, keep our arms around our manual presses, and we want to invest in an auto. What's the investment path look like for that? Like entry level all the way up to where's entry level going to be there?
I'd say somewhere around 50,000 ish to get in to automated screen printing. And it goes up from there. I mean, depending on your average color count, depending on, how much space you have. I mean, there's a lot of concerns that go into that purchase and that decision, but around 50,000.
Is it going to make the most sense to have a direct to screen system and automated reclamation equipment when you go to an auto?
I would say so. I mean, I think if you've got the money to invest and you're really wanting to streamline your operations, I think direct to screen is key. I mean, between those two, if I'm debating between direct to screen versus post press cleaning, I would pick direct to screen all day long. And the reason for that is it's going to speed up your registration process. I mean, we've got folks on our machines that are using, direct to screen systems, either wax or laser, that aren't even touching micro registration ever. I mean, you're able to walk to the press, you use our pre-registration board, you're running a direct to screen, you pop the screen in that reg board and clamp down and you're done.
Would you say the ROQ Oval is kind of at the top of the production scale in your world?
It depends on need. I mean, our highest end press is our Eco. That's a round system. I would say the ovals, where we get into those, is folks that do a lot of water based, a lot of discharge. They need a lot of flashing. People that are doing a lot of oversized printing, and then oddly a space thing. There's a lot of buildings now. You've got posts and stuff in the middle, and so we see some folks go oval because it's what makes sense for their shop. Again, I mean, every press that we have is going to serve a different purpose, right? So all the way from our E, which is an electric press for people that don't want to mess with running airlines, all the way, up to the Eco and everything in between. So they all have different functionality, different benefits for people depending on what their needs are.
So what should the customer journey look like if somebody's investing in a big piece of equipment, and whether it's automated screen printing equipment or DTF or a DTG, what's the ideal customer journey?
I'm going to start pre-buying journey. Anyone looking at any type of equipment, go see it. Not in person at a show. I mean, go see it at a show, sure, but go to a shop using it. That's the biggest thing that we do here at ROQ is when people are interested, we open up our doors. We have an amazing group of clients that will let people in. We don't even go. It's like, I don't want my people there. Go on your own, talk to someone else, see how they're using it, see what bumps in the road they've had, see how it's worked out for them, how the service is. I mean, all those things that you brought up earlier, Craig. Go talk to another shop and do it without a salesperson with you. I mean, that's key. That way you can have an open, honest, frank conversation with that, whatever shop you're visiting about, the equipment that you're looking at. I would do that for anything. Screen, DTF, DTG, go see it, go watch it run, go see it really work in production. That's step one. Have the business plan as step two, understand what it is you're using it for. Understand what kind of training, I mean, to get to your point, Craig, what kind of training is the company offering you that's putting it in, and again, that goes across all platforms. Um, and then go sell business to make it work for you. I mean, that would be after purchase, right? So once you're done with purchase, I mean, make sure it's running, and it won't run unless you've got the business to make it run. So I think, again, those are the things people leave out. It's fun to say, I'm going to automate this, I'm going to bring in this great piece of equipment, whatever the case may be. And then they're scratching their head when that thing's not turning. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I just had a flashback of my dad rolling back onto the floor in our screen printing business and seeing our printers standing around twiddling their thumbs, and him asking the question, hey, what's going on? And they're like, well, hey, we're backed up in the film room, or we're backed up in the art department, or there's some custom ink that has to be mixed, and then we haven't had the ink mixed. And that kind of segue, and then he'd just say, grab a broom. And then he'd go yell at our production manager. But that kind of brings up this whole concept of software and production software. And I think a lot of times people put a lot of energy and effort into researching their equipment, but they don't realize there's something that's behind the scenes that's going to have to move those jobs through the shop efficiently. And in our ecosystem, it's Printavo. It's our production management system. How important do you think is production management software in this whole scope of bulk production and POD?
It's an absolute must. I mean, you cannot run a business anymore on Excel and QuickBooks. It's just, I mean, QuickBooks is a piece of what you need maybe financially, but it needs to have an API over to whatever it is that you're using to run your business. You have to have software to run your business. Is one of the things that I pride ourselves on is our tech stack is insane in comparison to a lot of other vendors that are in this industry. We really pride ourselves on all of the technology that we put in that not only helps us run the business, but it helps our consumers get access to the information faster. Have visibility to things like service is a great example, right? There's a full portal that we've built for our customers, so it's easy. They can go in, they can create a ticket, they can see where that ticket's at, they can look up past invoices, they can look up all sorts of stuff, right? So, you've got to think not only for your own business, but how is that software impacting your client journey as well? It makes their lives easier. You got to think on a day-to-day basis, everyone else in the world is using software all day long for any job that they have. So when you as a printer can bring to your client the ability to use what they already know and want, it's going to make their life easier. And that's where the web store is even just such a no-brainer, right? It's like, where do people on Amazon every day?
Yeah.
That's how they're used to shopping. If you can provide that to them and you can provide that experience, it's something that they know and they understand, compared to you showing up with, a book of some prints and saying, hey, I print shirts. Do you want to buy some from me? You've got to have a better way. So to me, again, we sell equipment. That is how we make money. I would tell people to go invest in their tech stack before they automate the next process, because what's cool, once you have the software, it'll work with our equipment. We have APIs that you can actually link up our equipment with your software, depending on what it is, and we even have our own metrics where, all of our presses now have open gateways on them. You can connect those into your software. So if you got your own proprietary software, we can run an API. You can start to pull data from your press. When does it stop? When does it start? What job is it working on? So on and so forth. So, I mean, this stuff gets super important to be able to manage and run your business.
I talk to hundreds of people at trade shows a year, and one of the common things that we hear from customers, especially after we've done a demo or presentation, is I'm going to wait until my business is big enough to invest in software and production, specifically like e-commerce software or production, software like Printavo. And I'm like sitting here thinking to myself, if I was going to start a business tomorrow and I was going to compete with you, I've got quite a bit of work experience that I have a lot of expertise that I would apply, but the smartest decision I would make is I would start with my tech stack. I would have bulletproof production management software. I would have a tailored industry specific e-commerce platform, not like a generic like shop. Shopify is great if you want to sell candles online, one off, but if you're trying to deploy, 1,400 stores like B Graphics, it's going to be pretty difficult to manage that with 1,400 Shopify stores, right? And then I'm on an InkSoft store right here that's pretty indicative of typical InkSoft store and has the designer built in here, so I don't have to have all 27 sports from the school. I can just go in here and type in whatever sport, and So these are the things that separate a generic e-commerce platform like Shopify from a tuned e-commerce platform that's designed to host stores for our industry. And I think one of the things that people oftentimes miss out on when they're thinking about e-commerce, you talked about like the portal you're talking about for customer service, make it easy for your customers, right? If you do e-commerce right, you'll have a portal for your customers where they can see how their stores are doing. They can see their past designs, so they know if they need to reorder, or if they just want to initiate a reorder from their portal, they go in here to say reorder, right? So it's about creating that Amazon-like shopping experience. And I would just caution against waiting till you have enough business to justify the expense of investing in the right software versus getting started right from the get-go so your business grows faster and you don't handicap yourself. This is what's going to
bring you to business. And it's funny because all these companies that we're talking about earlier that we look up to, that, a lot of us want to aspire to be, they all started as software companies. All of them.
Yeah.
And then they printed, and then they added different types of printing, and then but it started a lot of them as IT companies. I'm not going to say all, but a lot of them did.
Most of them. And I kind of called that out earlier. If you look at the, rush order tees and custom inks of the world that are, true industry leaders now, Ninja Transfer is another big company, or you can even say Stalls. They are just as much software companies as they are printing or fulfillment houses now. So the software components is critical to your growth. And I always like to say there's 3 stages of investing in software. Stage 1 is, I know I've got a problem and I need to do something. So that's when you're kind of beat into the stage of reasonableness. We're like, yeah, okay, I know I need to get off the Post-it notes and the Excel spreadsheets. And then there's phase 2 where if you do it right and you implement it correctly, I can't think of how we would ever go back to the way we were doing it. This is just the way we do it now. That's a really great place to be. But I kind of feel like the payoff of stage 3 is when sanity and life balance is restored. And so when you can go on vacation and you don't have your coworkers or employees texting you 27 times. And when you come back in, you can look at your shop dashboard and know, hey, this is where we're at. And also being able to see your payments coming in on your cell phone. That's a pretty cool thing you can do in Printavo. So that's been kind of my experience. Coming up with a business plan around that piece of technology, you don't have any excuses anymore because you can prompt that right into ChatGPT or your AI bot of choice, and it will deliver a brilliant business plan. And you can do something like ask it, what are the key questions I should be looking at before investing in this piece of equipment? It will tell you. It's collective intelligence from all this great data. It's collected from all of these articles people like myself write, and it's the collective intelligence of ChatGPT. Leverage that, use that.
Other people. I mean, that's a big one too.
Yeah.
How did you leverage this in your business? How are you successful with this? I mean, that's one of the things we're even here to help. I mean, you know, we don't sell DTF equipment, but if people wanted to know, like, hey, how have people made this work? We'll connect you with people that have. Go talk to them. I mean, I think it's just important to leverage the resources that we have out there to make smart decisions, but have an understanding of what we're wanting to do and how we're going to deploy it before we just go spend money. I mean, I'd say that for your tech stack too. Look at software, ask questions, ask other people that use it. How do they use it for their business? Where has it been helpful? How much do they charge to build a web store? How much do they charge to host the web store? You know, what are customers paying for that stuff? I mean, these things are all new revenue streams too, which is also interesting about your point that you kind of made that someone was saying, you know, I want to wait until my business grows to invest. Think of the revenue stream, just having the capability to do this that you could build that's passive. I mean, it can pay for itself times 20, just getting people to sign up to have a web store, whether they're buying printed material from you or not, you hosting that store for them is a revenue stream, right? So I think that's you've got to think through all that and then ask people the questions so you make sure you're going down the right path.
Yeah, I mentioned B Graphics earlier. They're hosting at last count, I can't tallied it up recently, 1,400 InkSoft stores, and I would hate to compete against these guys. And their whole production workflow is all built around DTF. They were a huge screen printer, and they kind of shifted to DTF. And if you have an eye for things, you'll notice like the way they set these graphics up, they're perfect for DTF transfers because they're not giving you a lot of choices in terms of color variability. Because they don't want to have to print a zillion different transfers, and they're using the same transfer across quite a bit of a variety of product. So it's pretty smart how they set these up, but they're just making it easy for their customers to do business with them, and they must be doing something right. They got 1,400 stores. I see the commerce that they are pumping through their business. It's stunning, and small family business grew up into this big thing. So two last questions. I'll fire off the first one, and I'll give you a little time to think about the second one. First question is, what do you think is the biggest misconception around just automation in general? And then the second question is, what's that one piece of advice you'd give to somebody starting out?
Business biggest misconception on automation, I think, is probably the idea that, you know, spending money on automating something is going to fix everything for you. And, you know, it's not even a misconception. I guess it is kind of a misconception, but I just go into people making decisions that are not founded in some sort of research and understanding of what the true purpose of something is. Right. I think it's easy to walk into a show or something like that and be sold to and get excited and feel like you've got, okay, this is going to fix my problems, or this is kind of the next big thing, and this is what I have to do, without really having that understanding of what it is. And I know I'm kind of just repeating myself over and over again, but it's just a big thing that I did in my past. And it was, if I could go back in time, you know, you asked that old question, if you could go back in time and change one thing, I would have thought through my business better than what I did when I made financial, you know, decisions on where I'm spending my money. And I think that we all get caught in that, right? It's the thrill, it's it's the newness, right? It's bringing something in. So I would just say, do the math, make smart decisions, understand what it's doing for your business, understanding how you're going to sell whatever it is that you're bringing in. Don't try to just band-aid something with automation. Really research it and really understand where the best places in your business are to automate. You know, I think that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people don't see, whether that's in their dark room, really just sitting in there and understanding what's happening every day, whether it's out in the production floor, whether it's you've got an old piece of equipment that's actually bogging you down. It may be automated already, but it's problematic. You know, is that something that needs to be fixed or replaced? So I'd say really, really looking at all those things. You know, my best piece of advice for anyone getting started in this industry, or anyone that's just started, Get educated. It's just number one. Continue to work on yourself. Continue to improve who you are as a business owner, as a leader, um, and be curious, ask questions, read books, meet with other business professionals that are not in our industry. I think that's a key piece of advice there. Find other CEOs, other entrepreneurs. What are they doing in their businesses? I've been a part of a Vistage group for years. I've always had a business coach for the last, God, 15 years. I've had a business coach. Surround yourself with people that are going to take you to that next level and you'll be successful. But I think you got to continue to educate. You've got to continue to improve yourself and, and care about people. People are first. You don't have a business without people. You don't have a business without a good culture. Just treat people well.
I think that's very good advice. And that only happens if you have an open mind and if you have the ability to accept criticism and learn from it. And that was the hardest lesson I learned in my career, was accepting criticism and learning from it and not taking it personally. Last time we did this, I said, hey, we'll have to do it again sometime. And we did. And I think we'll have to do it again sometime too. Ross, I always enjoy hooking up with you. I always learn a ton. I always love picking your brain. Thank you so much for coming on. ROQ is a very important partner of Inktavo. We love working with you and your team. I alluded earlier that there's kind of a vibe that meshes really well with the two companies. It's just a really enjoyable to work with you guys, and we appreciate you taking your time to come on.
Thanks
So
for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Well, we will see the rest of you on the next Decorator Academy. Thanks for joining us today.